Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Well, guys, we have got a really special treat in store today because I have with me Lily Tang Williams. Now, I got connected with Lily when I started fighting for HB 544 in New Hampshire, working with these state representatives to try to get critical race theory effectively not banned, but not funded by taxpayer dollars in the state of New Hampshire. And the name that I kept hearing over and over and over again is people were saying, like, Carlin, have you talked to Lily Tang Williams? And I was like, I have not talked to her yet. And they said, oh, you're going to remember her when you talk to her. And that was absolutely the truth. Lily was one of the people that testified at the hearing in the House a couple of weeks ago. And I'm so excited to have her on the channel for an hour today to discuss her experiences because her story is fascinating. So to introduce Lily, she was a law school assistant professor at Fudan University who became an American businesswoman and educator. She was born to illiterate working class parents in China's western, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Lily.
Sichuan.
There we go. Province. Before Mao's Cultural Revolution, Lily Tang Williams grew up experiencing extremely poor living conditions, food rationing, social chaos, and communist indoctrination. She came to America in 1988 to study in graduate school. Today, Lily has her own business, and she relishes the freedom, independence, and prosperity she found in America. She loves her new country and travels frequently throughout the states to share the story of her American dream. Welcome, Lily. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope someday we will meet in person.
Yes, I'm sure that we will. But I wanted to start off with your story because you grew up during the Cultural Revolution in China. Let me just open the floor to you. What was that like?
Well, unfortunately, I was born 2 years right before Chairman Mao started his Cultural Revolution. Of course, I did not know anything about what it was about. We just born into it. And later I learned he used this Cultural Revolution to really do a cleansing and purge all his political enemies inside of Communist Party, which is ruling one party, and the outside the party. So all the people he used to advance his agenda were a whole bunch of young people and very innocent, surely worship him as supreme leader called the Red Guards. So what was life like? When I was little, it was just loudspeaker come on our community house and every morning 6:30 and to sing red songs, to say long live Chairman Mao, time to go work and time to go to school. And you cannot even sleep in. Of course, we have very, very primitive conditions where 8 families share one bathroom. It's a big hole on the ground and no light bulbs at night. So you better get a little party in your apartment. Otherwise, you will fall into this big hole and get buried alive by the human waste. And it was one water faucet and very dark and no electricity. But we were basically indoctrinated to believe we should be grateful. We should be grateful for our leader, for our party, because Taiwanese people were suffering and the 2/3 of the world population were starving. And we were starving. My stomach was growling all the time because we had the food rationing coupons that if your parents were higher positions, then they get to have more coupons than you do. My parents were illiterate workers class, bottom of the food chain. So communists will want you to believe once you achieve communism, socialism, you're on the top of the food chain. That's not true. All the promises were broken that he promised to the Chinese people. Instead, you have like millions, for about 45 million people starved to death in the 3 years mass famine. So that's the situation I was in, but I did not know anything. I was his, young pioneer, red guard, and I was a red child. And I'm wearing this jacket today because during Mao, he said, let's get rid of 4 old culture, old custom, old ideas, and old customs. So that old habit. So if you have a Chinese traditional jacket like this, that's old. That's old Chinese tradition. We need to ban it. So we were wearing approved political correct colors like white and green and navy blue, and the hairs have to be correct. You cannot have hair laid down like this. And you cannot have makeup. The girls not supposed to look attractive. We're banned from dating. Isn't that sick when you look back? And when I look at my life, it's like, how did I believe that? But you have no choice because you did not know the truth. They control all the press, all the radio stations, all the newspapers. There's no free speech. How do you know the truth? Sad to say, that's the environment I grew up with.
So you just said so many interesting things just then, which I see being paralleled in our culture right now. You said that, they basically didn't want women to look like women, which I think we're absolutely seeing nowadays. They're trying to basically tell women that, there's one way to be, and then that's the way you should do it. You're talking about, you were telling me before we came on the air that that he was telling you to burn, not just that you couldn't wear that pretty jacket, but that burn it because this is a remnant of the past. And it's right now we're experiencing where they're trying to erase the past now in this country.
Well, Mao used race guards and asked them to go basically eliminate all rightists and capitalists, revisionists, whatever he named them, 5 black classes. So they forgive you example that the red guard would go door to door, vandalize 250,000 private homes. That time, probably just people's homes, no more private property in Shanghai. So before they come, people who are a little bit wealthy had all the traditional silk jacket, barcade jacket, dresses like this, all the furniture, the books and family photos. You got to burn them. You got to get rid of them. And otherwise, they found out you have those things, and you're going to go to the struggling sessions to ask you to confess. And they will denounce you, publicly shame you, and hold their face like this, and it was public shaming sessions. And then they ask you to go to a room, give you a piece of paper to say, check those out and find out how black class you were. How many years ago your ancestors owned the land, owned the factories, exploring workers and all that, self-criticize list. Then you got to stay in that room, write down to self-criticize you, to confess to Chiang Mai Mao. Does that sound familiar? It just so many people committed suicide according to the party official, okay? Not even my statistics. 20 million people, Chinese, died during the 10 years Cultural Revolution. And lots of people just killed themselves too. Some died of starvation, could not handle the torture, and some were murdered. You think that experiment needs to be tried again? Everything tried by communists and by socialist countries have failed. How many human beings we're going to make them to go through to try to say if your ideology is truly utopian society or not? Our promises of free food, equality and justice never came. I was silenced. I was so afraid to speak the truth. I just complied, long live Chiang Mai Mao, hold a little. Thank God my parents were red class. What if I was black class? I would be public shamed all the time in the government schools. Think about what kind of life people would have to live. That's why some people get depressed and just totally disappear from the society.
So what is the difference between red class and black class?
So according to your positions and your family background, for example, if you are like me, workers and peasants, revolutionary and carters and soldiers, Communist Party and good members, and you are the red class. But if you are landowners and rightists, so-called, how do they define rightists? According to Mao, rightists are anybody who dissident, intellectuals who don't agree with him. And if you have a foreign overseas connections, if your family were rich and you were capitalist and were rich before he took over, then you were black classes. See, lots of kids already become red classes if you look at their current status. But if you're black class because your family were black, because your grandparents owned land, then you were classified with your ancestors. You were black classes, and you can never be allowed to join Mao's grassroots organizations like Young Pioneer, Red Guards, and you will never get promoted to work, and you're supposed to go to those struggling sessions. Some kids just feel so bad about being a black class family. They would denounce their family members. There's a one guy documentary talk about he was 16, red girl. He tipped the government police to say, my mom said something bad about Chen Mao, like he did not write his little red books. And they come to get his mom, torture her to death in front of his eyes. And he been living alone in that guilt for all his life. He goes to his mom's place now, the place she was tortured to death, to give flower and talk to her all day. So sad.
Wow. Okay. So much to unpack there. So you've talked about the public struggle sessions, the public shaming sessions a couple of times. And I want to really get in on this because I feel like this happens all the time. Now, not in an organized way where it's sanctioned by the government necessarily, but we see public struggle sessions everywhere. We see them in schools, we see them online, we see them in organizations, and so tell us a little bit more about how that happened in China.
Well, when I first saw on TV that somebody eating in the restaurant were publicly shamed by social justice warriors, hold their face up in front of her face, I was so shocked. It's like, wow, that sure reminds me of the public shaming struggling sessions. You cannot even be quiet. So the struggling session, the aim is to help the whole country to form certain public opinions against the black class families and the so-called bad elements of the society. And the session normally will gather huge crowds in the library, in schools, Mao shut down all the schools to do political struggles for the young people, right? So you have all those public areas that gather lots of people just don't know what's going on, let's go say it. But they will have loudspeakers to say, come to say it. This Mr. Wang is really bad, the black class, we got to make him to confess his crimes. His bad influence, and his family were super rich, exploring people. So you go to those struggling sessions. So those people lower their head, confess, denounce themselves. If they don't do good job, you said, I have no crime to confess. And then they're gonna, hold their face up and chanting slogans, down Mr. Wang, Then sometimes like in the universities and on campuses, the students were throw rocks at professors and principals who did not confess according to their style, their wish. It was horrible. Then you can get the torture at night, go back to a little camp to stay there overnight, and low food, no water. The worst, they sent you to countryside, primitive re-educational camps for you continue to do hard manual labor. I had a high school teacher when I was 16. He was really tall and handsome, my math teacher. He was sick. I went to visit him. He said, Lily, I hurt my back because of my manual work in the re-educational camp. So in the 50s, Mao and the party were saying, come on, give us criticism. They always make those empty promises. We want to hear what you truly think about party. And he and his college students were so naive. They gave some feedback. It was very minor feedback to say, oh, maybe policy here needs to change, this policy needs to change. Then they get on the blacklist, all sent to the re-educational camps, doing hard labor. Then he told me, our country is made by the people who only want to exercise rule of man, not a rule of laws. And a few madmen can kill millions of people. And that just really hit me. That's why when I was able to go to college at the age of 17, I said, oh, I'm going to change China to a rule of law society. And boom, that dream come total crash. When I become faculty member of a law school, it's still subject to one party rule. And they told me, Lily, our law is not to serve the people. Our law is a tool for the Communist Party to govern the masses. You're just one of the masses. You are not a human being with dignity and pride. I was totally depressed. For 4 years in college, why am I going to do that? That's why later I decided I'm going to leave China because I want to live like a human being with dignity and pride.
So let me just really make sure I understood what you just said, because you said that when you became a professor at a law school, you wanted to teach people the rule of law so that could be elevated over this government that was just intent on controlling people, right? And the people at the law school said to you, "No, no, 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 no. The law does not serve the people. The law serves the one-party system."
Correct. That was a Soviet Union model, that you are assumed to be guilty by the state until you prove yourself to be innocent. Nobody could ever prove themselves to be innocent. Even in China today, so-called the second largest economy, if you're a dissident, your social credit score is really bad, you lose all your freedoms. You know, you go to jail. Human rights lawyers, 30 of them disappeared a few years ago, include their family members. You don't have a fair trial. Some of them just in the prison of conscience, you know, we call the black prisons, where you get locked up, you don't have a fair trial, you don't have due process, or you come out on public TV to do a public confessing, I'm guilty. Who knows how many tortures made them to do that, right? If they want to live and not to be tortured. So that the people don't understand when they talk about China today, and the people who on another side will say, oh, China is the second largest economy now, and they're doing great to combat COVID, all that stuff. They don't understand. We have a one-party rule. All the leaders were not elected. They're appointed, and they control all the newspapers, TV stations, and radios, and the social media, and big tech. How could they let you to know the truth? You trust their numbers? You are insane. So people don't understand what is the system we have in China. It's more like a fascist country now, because they allow you to have a little bit of freedom to own your business, running restaurant, to make some money. But you gotta listen to me. Even billionaires disappear in China once in a while. Then they come out to apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that against the policy. I shouldn't. Just look at Jack Ma, right? He was disappeared for a while. Nobody is safe in a totalitarian country, in a one-party dictatorship. And we need to be united as people, because they like to divide people, then conquer them all. If you want to cancel other people now, trust me, you will be the next to be canceled by them, because trust me, you're not 1% of political ruling class in this country, and you will be canceled next. That's my advice to all the actually normal liberals or classical liberals. You need to speak up loud to against this crap.
Mm-hmm. Lily, let me ask you this. So Joe Biden did a town hall a couple of weeks ago where he was asked about the concentration camps in China that the Uyghur Muslims are being kept in. And he said that this just amounts to cultural norms, differences in cultural norms. What did you think when he said that? That the only reason that we should be upset about this is just that China just has different cultural norms than us. Your thoughts?
I just was shocked to hear him saying that on public TV. Does he even understand the political ideologies system difference? You know, the people in America want to blame America to be systemic racist country. We're a bad country. We are guilty of lots of things. In China, one-party dictatorship is committing cultural genocide against the Uyghurs, which are Turkish Muslim groups. 1 million of them estimate in the concentration camps. That's why I call China, fascist country now, fascist government. They then get Han people, which is like me, 95% Chinese are Han. Majority people speak Mandarin, but then the 5% of minority groups in China, they do not allow you to have your own cultural identity. They want you to learn the Mandarin, practice, the party loyalty to the Communist Party. And if you want to say anything against the party, then you go to concentration camps and they watch you like hawks. If you look at Xinjiang, foreigners cannot go there, even with a visa. You need a special permit to go there. And if reporters go there, I even don't know you allow reporters right now, but if you go there, you are going around with a party leader, official to show you around. It's all big show. So the Uyghurs woman who lost husband to concentration camps, the officials were sent the Chinese Han man, normally party members, to go live in their house. trying to maybe even sleep with the woman and have a baby, so they'll be half Han, so they convert them to be Han people. It's like, it's sick. When Joe Biden said that, I was just so shocked. Where is our conscious journalists today who really worship freedom of press and speech to challenge that, to call him out on that? And then when you talk about Hunter Biden connection with China, economic interest, all the business money he can make, then Joe Biden come out to say this. It's beyond me. I hope all the people with conscience, especially in press, should ask him tough questions on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they should have. So, I'm already seeing so many parallels with what's happening in the United States right now, particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement. You already mentioned that the struggle sessions that you saw in China were, we can see the parallels between the Black Lives Matters protesters coming up to people just eating dinner at a restaurant and holding their fist up and trying to pressure them into saying the right words. What do you see happening in this country right now that you have really come to love and appreciate that mirrors what you experienced growing up in China?
Well, that people sometimes are so naive and so easily to be manipulated by the press, by the social media, and by their politicians. I always warn young people who truly believe, they are fighting racism, and be aware, do your own research. There are individual bad cases of racism. We need to work together, have a conversation to reduce that. But to teach an entire, generation about, America is a racist country, is a systemic racist, so we need to go out to make people actively anti-racism, or the white people were born racist. That's very dangerous. Because I see that even the Black Lives Matter leaders who founded that organization call themselves, we are trained Marxist, communist. It's like, then why the press will not talk about that? If they are trained Marxist, but they are using our young people in droves, masses, to believe their agenda, to teach our kids in schools about critical race theory, so they want to demonize 60% of the population and 90% of white people in New Hampshire. I don't buy that, because I am a color. The people, I have yellow skin, and I love this country because I truly believe America's Declaration of Independence and all men are created equal. We have a constitutional guaranteed right. I also learned about racist history, slavery, but after the civil rights movement, Americans have come a long way. We have the sitting vice president is half black, and we had a black president for 8 years. How do you explain, convince me, former immigrant from China, to say, you know what, America's systemic racist country? I don't feel oppressed here. I love this country. That's why I always post positive stuff by traveling everywhere and, eat and, have fun, because I love the freedom I cherish in this country. But the people who are born in this country buy into those, indoctrination and take their freedom for granted. It's so sad for me to say that.
One of the things that was kind of shocking to me was after we both testified at that House hearing for HB 544, there was a high schooler that also testified at that hearing. And so she was very composed during the hearing, and I'm very in favor of young people being involved in politics. I thought that was good. But afterwards, she started coming at me on Twitter and calling me all sorts of names. And I went on her Twitter profile, and it turns out she self-identifies as a Marxist, and she has the Communist Manifesto all over her Twitter profile. And I couldn't help but thinking, this is a high school student in New Hampshire. Where is she learning this? And why is no one teaching her the actual history of that book that she's holding up so proudly?
Well, I read Communist Manifesto many times, including the English copy sold by Amazon. Hey, Amazon, you're banning other books, but you're not banning Communist Manifesto, so our kids can learn that, huh? I don't mind people to read all the books to make correct judgment themselves. the problem I have with our government-controlled schools to push their radical left agenda, like a Communist Manifesto, which listed one of the 10 goals of communism is free education for all our youth. As I said, it was a broken promise. It was never free. My parents worked 6 days a week to pay for our public schools in China, and I had to stay home for a whole year to babysit my 1-year-old infant brother when I was 6 because we were poor. My parents could not afford the government factory small daycare. I had to stay home. I was scared, very scared at 6 years old. So by the time I went to school at 7, I was so happy. I was so motivated to be a best student I can be because I was pulled back for a year and my parents cannot even read. So I thought that was my goal, to get the best education. But the thing is, though, here in this country, people are demanding government to give them free stuff. They don't know what is the potential cost of the free stuff. Free stuff is that it costs you freedom, your right, and you will be equally poor and even food rationing coupons and eating rat meat. Okay, even today's China, poor countryside, some families had to catch rats because they were hungry. They did not have enough food to eat. It's totally different from the propaganda picture you see from Beijing. You know, China is rich and prosperous and this or that. You know, but I have my own source of information. So our kids in this country are not taught the real history because we truly did not have lots of school choice yet. That's why I support school choice. If you're the parents, you disapprove all that left agenda in our schools, then demand you have options to educate your kids at another school you approve of. That's a fundamental parental rights in this country. But that's why we're still fighting that. We're trying to get the education freedom account passed in New Hampshire.
Yes, we are. And hopefully that'll come to pass sooner rather than later. Folks, if you're enjoying this interview so far, I hope you'll consider hitting the thumbs up button. I also just want to remind you that all of Lily's information is in the description. So please go follow her on Facebook, Twitter, and she does have her own YouTube channel. And we want her story out there as much as we possibly can. So we appreciate that. So Lily, you grew up in this system in which you were indoctrinated into this ideology. But at some point, you kind of woke up and realized that that was not where you want to be. Can you talk to me about that process a little bit?
Well, I first time start to question when I was 12 years old, when my God died. How could my God Mao die, right? I was doing the long live my Mao, 10,000 years, another 10,000 years, double 10,000 years. We do that chanting every day for 6 days a week for 5 straight years. Then he died. I was so lost. I did not know what to believe. I start to just thinking to myself, you got to keep everything private thought to yourself because somebody could turn you over otherwise, to say, did somebody lie to me? Lie to my whole generation? And so by the time I went to law school at the age of 17, 1981, the party officially come out to say, Mao made a mistake. The 10 years Cultural Revolution was a mistake. He was human. He was human, but I was such a useful idiot and believe everything. I had to talk to him. Even in the clouds, when you were so indoctrinated, right, brainwashed, you become like, oh, you God, I can say Chairman Mao talking to me from above the sky in the clouds. You saw his smiling face. Oh, it's like so sad. So when I looked for truth in law school, I did not find the truth. I just found out, oh, I cannot change China to rule of law either. What I'm gonna do? So I start to be rebellions, going to dancing parties and search for something, I don't know, until I met a foreign students. Oh, I just grabbed them to say, tell me about the world outside China, your country. One American student told me about America. He told me about Declaration of Independence. And then my light bulb came on. Wow, I never heard this before. I have individual rights given to me by God, not by my government, cannot be taken away by government, regardless of my skin color, my nationality, my gender. It was just eye-opening. In order to see a foreign student in China, you have to register at their building. Who are you? What are your major? What are you going to talk about? Time in, time out. That's how they were watched and tracked, me too. So after first time I heard about this, I have a God-given right. I'm not gonna register. I know they don't want me to talk about this. So I lied, I cheated. I just, when the old lady go to pour tea or go to bathroom, I will sleep upstairs, very quiet, go see that American student to tell me more about America. I learned about citizens' right to vote, right to bear arms, right to free speech, religion, all that. Oh, that's such an awesome country. I was a third year in my law school. So when I become so depressed in law school as a faculty member, as an employee, where Communist Party block committees on your each department still want you to say "Kongbayang, Kongbayang," I couldn't take it anymore. I was going insane. I said, I need to get out. And I tried very hard to get out of China, have to get permission to leave. Your law school party member have to sign you off to say, we allow her to quit her job, go into America for graduate school, and get a passport. 7 trips to the public bureau, security bureau to get my passport to leave. I had to butter him up, to participate, to say "Kongbayang" again, so he can let me to leave. But in my heart, I had to keep everything to myself. It's like, God, I cannot wait to get out. I hope I can get out. That's why I always call. I fled for America. But I had to sign agreement. They made me to sign agreement. I promised to go back after I get my master's degree. Or I get kicked out of party because we have to be party member in order to teach in law school. You have no choice because they want to question your loyalty if you don't join the party. Then by the time I get my second term, it's hard. The second term is that we're going to send you personnel file to China. So if you don't know personnel file, Chinese government tracks its citizens from birth to death by 2 systems. One is household registration. When you were born, okay, your parents had a household registration adding you as a child. They know where you live, and you cannot pack up, oh, I'm moving to Shanghai. No, without permission, without changing this household registration, you are trapped here. You cannot leave. During the 50s, when people were starving to death, they could not even beg in another village because they don't have government papers, permit to move to another village to beg. So they should just stay there, starving to death. And another system is personnel files, individual file. When you are a child in school, you get a student file, private. And you are not allowed to see it. Your parents are not allowed to see it. It's a secret file shared by all government agencies and your future employers. So by the time I need to think about staying in America, they threaten me. Oh, we're going to send you a personnel file, which is a work file as an employee of Fudan University Law School to Chengdu. I can never go back to Shanghai to teach, to live as a legal resident because I'm supposed to go back to my file, my household registration place. So who knows? I'm haunted. Hey, my file is still probably in Chengdu somewhere, police station.
Wow. And you said something, I mean, my God, like one of the things that really just stuck out to me in what you said was that you are not allowed to teach at a university if you are not a part of that party. So if you went back now, you wouldn't be allowed to teach or have any influence over anything. And that to me, it's so striking to me because we know that 95% of professors at universities in America are Democrats. And they actively ridicule anyone that goes against them. I have a guy right now that I know that just posted a video online today, basically calling out the University of Vermont because they're doing all of this stuff, and he's being ridiculed by his fellow faculty members for speaking up and questioning it. It's just, what you're telling is terrifying. The parallels between the two are actually terrifying. We're watching this happen in real time in the United States, and people are not getting it.
Correct. I have been trying so hard for past 4 years to go to schools and colleges to speak to kids, nonpartisan, just to tell my personal stories, how horrible that is, how many people die. We don't want to go down to that path. But I cannot get into lots of schools because they think I'm a radical right wing. What? I love freedom, want to tell my stories. We want to live in a free country, have a free speech. Is a radical. I'm a radical now. Then what do you call the communists and Marxists in our schools, indoctrinate our children? Who are they? It's a bizarre. They seem to have this moral superiority over us. Oh, they are right, we are wrong. And they control the narratives and media and the social media platforms. So our kids are fed those stuff every day. I did commend some college students join us after they listened to my stories 2 or 3 weeks later. A Bernie Sanders supporter told me, Lily, I really enjoy your story, and I'm no longer a supporter 2 weeks later in West Virginia University. But I cannot get into lots of schools. I love to be educator, to connect with our students. But like you said, our professors are silenced if you have different opinions. Our teachers are very afraid to lose their jobs in the K-12. I have teachers tell me, moderate Democrat teachers, they are afraid to lose their jobs, so they have to teach the students whatever they were pushed down from teachers union, Black Lives Matter, or Common Core to teach, even though they disagree with it because they are afraid for their jobs too. See, the loudest radical left side dominating all aspects of our society, our boardrooms of corporations. But then you look at the history. Is that what the communists did? How many people have to die for that? How many intellectuals committed suicide during Mao because they were dissidents, and they did not, they just could not even survive in extremely hostile, political correct environment. You know, the professors today have to write a paper anonymously to show their opinion. This country is in crisis. We need to come out to against that, to stop that. Otherwise, I don't want anything happen to me in China to happen to our people, our children in this country.
Absolutely. And Katie Myers says, in my opinion, they want us to not know history so they don't know what they're doing. You know, it's funny. I have this book sitting on my desk. It's actually a textbook that used to be taught in schools. It's called What You Should Know About Communism and Why. And we're actually, like, a bunch of us in my locals community bought this book just because this used to be taught in schools. And now we wanted to, like, preserve it by having physical copies because this is not taught in schools anymore. They don't want us. Like, I never learned about this stuff in school. I have a book sitting for me, waiting for me to read downstairs on the Cultural Revolution, because I think that, you know, it's so important that all of us understand the things that you went through in China and how it very well could happen in a place like this. And I think a lot of people think that it can't happen in America. What message would you send to them?
Well, people sometimes do ask me question, what is the difference between socialism and communism? And how about democratic socialism? I understand they really don't know the difference. That I always tell them at the beginning, you know, Mao wanted to have socialist country in China too. He promised all the free stuff, all the special and benefits to certain groups, and nothing happened. By the time 1956 and 7, after founding of China of 1949, he basically turned to full-blown communist country. There's no more private properties left. All the land, all the resources, all the factories belong to the state. And so people say, I always tell people, the communists know this. That's why Lenin said the goal of socialism is communism. There are different methods. The communism enslaved people by force, by violence. Like Mao said, the political power comes out, a barrel of gun. Only government allowed to have guns. But then socialism enslaved people by votes. You see what happened in Cuba, what happened in Venezuela, and so gradually, they get the people buy into their rhetorics, their free stuff, their empty promises, their class struggles between the oppressed and the oppressors, between the haves and have-not. It's typical, like a Marxist tactic, so divided people. So they buy into your stuff rhetorics, they vote for you. Who knows, you know, how many people voted for those kind of system? Guess what? They're starving now. Venezuela people are starving. They are eating dogs and cats. I had to eat rats. They're eating dogs and cats. We were not even allowed to have dogs and cats. You know, maybe raise some bunny rabbits if you were really starving, you know, for your food supply. So that's why the young people, they don't learn history. So all they hear is America is bad. Have they studied other countries? Do they want to go to other countries to live there just for a year to try out? When you go to China today, guess what? You're being watched. the 300 million public cameras to recognize your face in all the public places. And you're going to scan your face when you enter China's borders. And if you say anything as a foreigner, as an American citizen against Chinese government, be aware, just because you have American citizenship does not guarantee you safety. Even in Hong Kong, you can get arrested because they have national security law now. Anybody say anything against the government, you can go get locked up. That's how serious this is. So that's why I feel my stories are so important. Whatever reason is, there's some people will not come out publicly. But I feel like I was silenced for 24 years in China. I feel very alone. I couldn't share my thoughts with anybody because they could turn me over to the government. So I'm here in America, in the state of New Hampshire, live free or die state. I'm not going to be silenced. I'm ready to debate, have a conversation with anybody who might disagree with me. Because I see my fellow citizens are not my enemies. Because we all just want the best for our country, our kids, but it's the people who don't know what's going on. I want to reach out to them and talk about this.
Absolutely. Now, both you and I have been working very hard to try to advocate for HB 544, which would, effectively ban some of these more divisive concepts by being funded by taxpayer dollars to be taught in organizations and to be done in I think teacher training programs. Why do you think that HB 544 is an important bill to pass in New Hampshire?
Well, I heard actually we are taking the leadership in the country to be the first state to pass this bill. The critical race theory, basically is, I think that people might not know so much detail of it because they just all of a sudden been pushed into our society where people are asleep. They're based on a false foundation. The white people are born racist. Mm-hmm. So it's purely based on the identity politics. If you are white, you were born with privileges. You are racist, so you are guilty. You need to confess and apologize, pay reparations, and denounce yourself and to become actively anti-racist. It's like, but this whole theory is racist purely based on your skin and something you have no control over when you were born, and you're supposed to feel bad about your ancestors' history. Does that sound familiar? I told you about black classes in
It does.
South China.
Well, it's funny because this professor at UVM who just kind of posted a video today about it, I was talking to him a week or so ago, and he was telling me about this other professor he works with who actively he confesses his white privilege all the time when he's teaching, to the point where he's in tears about the fact that he's a man and he's white, and it's constant. And to me, it is absolutely sick to hate yourself so much because of how you were born.
That's what I'm saying. It happened during the Cultural Revolution in China. You hate yourself, you hate your family, you apologize, you cry, you ask for forgiveness. They even divided, right? Now they want to evaluate your own whiteness into 8 to 10 categories. There's a good one, there's a really bad one, really good one. And then it's the same with the black classes. They want you to go to details. How black are you? Here's how white are you? Depends your behavior, speeches. So if you apologize, take a knee, beg for forgiveness, and raise your face, join them, public shaming other people. Oh, maybe you're less white. You're not as bad as you were born really white, or something like that. It's insanity. How do people live in a country with human dignity? You cannot control your color. You cannot control that the previous history, what happened, we're not proud of. But hey, you're not a slave owner today, are you? And I want to also speak for minorities. We all come to this country as an immigrant, no matter what color you have, including people of color in this country. What stopped you today to go out, to work, to save, and to take a responsibility for yourself, for your happiness? You have a vice president whose family come from other countries as immigrant. And she achieved her American dream. She's our vice president. So what stops you? Why do they have to continue to sell this racism to our kids? I think lots of minorities feel the way I do. Please, progressive, don't speak for us. We love America. We want to come here to achieve our American dream. We want all the people here achieve their American dream. This is the melting pot. We are probably still the shining city on the hill for freedom in the world. Just please don't speak for us, okay? Go mind if you feel like bad, about your whiteness, denounce yourself, but don't force other good American people to apologize.
Yeah. My husband grew up in Ukraine, 500 miles away from Chernobyl. He talks to me about this all the time. Didn't even have running water in his house growing up. And he says to me all the time, he's like, Carlin, these kids have no idea. They have no idea what actual oppression and actual poverty means. And he feels the same way you do. He's actually more conservative than I am because he has experienced other parts of the world. And he came here because he wanted opportunity. He worked really hard for a lot of years. And, he's got a pretty good life here, and it's a place where that can happen for people who want to come here, take responsibility, work hard. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does over time, right?
Right. First of all, it took me 20 years just to wake up. I always tell people I was educated once, but it took me 20 years to get rid of it. Yeah, lifetime to get rid of it when you were indoctrinated. But once I got rid of that, my English got better. And I was laid off one time and from my job. I had a time to really stay home to study, to search for truth. And my husband, of course, always helped me. And he was like my mentor to say, you read this book, that book. That's where I learned. All my life was full of lies in China. What is a 3 years natural disaster? They call it 3 years mass starvation caused by 3 years natural disasters, like flooding. No, it was caused by Mao centralized, the economical planning policies. And nobody wants to talk about that. If you go to China today on internet, you cannot search. You cannot search a few magic words like June 4th, Tiananmen Square massacre. You cannot search like a Cultural Revolution and free Hong Kong, all that stuff. You cannot search them. It's totally like a civilized society. But it's so hard to find out today. I live in the country again, becoming similar to my old country. If you exercise your free speech, you can get canceled. Now, how about the comedians? Even Bill Maher is talking about cancel culture is out of control. Pretty soon, they're going to come after him, the comedians, to say, you have to be politically correct. They just kill all the comedians. What is fun to talk about if everybody is saying same thing, right? When you talk about diversity, you should talk about diversity of ideas, of people, and mind, instead of left is obsessed with your skin color. That's called racist, when you're obsessed with people's skin color. Not like an MLA case said, we should judge people based on their individual character, not on their skin color. They're doing the opposite today. It's just beyond me. I have to constantly tell people I don't understand how America just become this way. Very, very sad.
I agree with you. It's like it's so sad to me. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure I get these super chats in. Andrea L says, what gets me to look at how the government promised so much to Native Americans and what did they get? Are we supposed to trust the government now? I don't know why anyone would trust the government to deliver anything what they say they're going to. I mean, like, what message would you have for people who really believe that the government is going to come and save them?
So my journey is really long, from formal Mao's young pioneer, red guard, communist, to this country. At the beginning, I was just foreign student trying to learn language and culture. And I woke up and I become independent. I start to learn about grassroots democracy and how you self-govern. And then I got involved in the local, like the school board and my HOA board from the most grassroots level. And then I learned that when you wake up, there's so much things I can do, become an informed citizen. So I become Republican later, and after Bush, and I become libertarian because I just lost trust in that group of government to bail out the banks. I was so mad. and I become a libertarian, and now I'm a Republican again. I think we should be loyal to our country's founding principles. All men are created equal. And our loyalty should be to those values and to our country, not to any party. You know, people like to attack each other according to party. There are lots of good Democrats out there too. And they don't understand what is going on in this country. You know, I think that we should be united and to educate people, to win over, to be respectful. I respect your opinion. If you don't vote for me or don't support me, don't agree with me, that's fine. But let's have a conversation. But to shut down your business, shut down your book deals, and they cancel you, that's a totally Marxist way. You are leading country down to some, you know, socialist path, communist path. It's going to come back, bite us, enslave all of us. I don't think that's what Americans want. So we have to constantly to have conversations and be united. And we will reduce racism, but other ways are worse, a lot worse what they're promoting.
Yep, I agree. Ivan asks, how do we investigate schools' curriculums, and if we find they're propagating communism, how to hold the appropriate persons accountable? I mean, I think that this is something that both you and I are concerned with, is that this stuff is being taught in the schools. So any thoughts about how we can, you know, investigate this and bring this to light?
Well, there are lots of people who have been sleeping. They believe their local public schools are still local controlled, and they just don't know. The curriculum, according to New Hampshire, is supposed to be local control curriculum. But guess what? They're pushing the same stuff. Other states, other schools are pushing. Who is behind all this? Parents need to ask questions, get involved. You're going to get homework from your kids. Evaluate your white list. And call yourself all racist, white people. That's bizarre. So I think, I do believe we are the majority people who are just either silenced, afraid, or don't know. So we need to get involved. Just remember, mind your own business, take care of your family, do your responsibility stuff. It's a good thing. That's the American way. But in today's country now, they're not going to leave you alone just because you are being self-sufficient, work hard, pay taxes, and support your local schools. No, your local school is leaning left now. Look at what they're teaching. And look what they're pushing. Where did they get their curriculum? Did you approve their curriculum? And so we need lots of parental involvement. And to be a really informed American citizen, it requires time and work. I'm learning every day about the new stuff. And I have to also practice speaking with my English as my second language to look at my dictionary, how to say this word, you know. So I think we are the people, owners of this country. We don't want to give up. Let other people to destroy it and trash it just because you are the owner, but you have to do owner's job. That means take in charge and get involved and hold all the politicians accountable. Don't just buy into their rhetorics and their left medians who support them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Julianne says we can talk until we're blue in the face, but until we have the truth-telling media, we're going nowhere, and we must have journalist licensing boards. I'm not sure the journalist licensing boards are the answer, but I guess, Lily, a question I would have for you is, what role did the media play in the Cultural Revolution in China, and what do you think about what's going on here with the media today?
Well, of course, we did not have free press, free media. The biggest, most famous Communist Party's Central Department of Propaganda, actually today, it's not just, suppress all their own people. They have infiltrated into all the Western democratic countries, including ours. If you look up Confucius Institute, maybe they still have their center in our University of New Hampshire, and they are funded by Chinese government, okay? And the Xinhua News Agency, as recently as last year, were in this country, and they gave money to our newspapers. Look into that. So what we have to do is to say, I don't support license board because that's what China doing. They want to give a journalist license. So if you don't pass PC test, you don't get to become citizen and activist. So what I support is authoritative media, people like you, for example, doing your city journalist duty to tell the truth, to interview people like me, stay away from your major TVs and go to find a different source of information, put all together to make up your mind. Say quite the contrary to radical left. I believe most people are capable of making correct decisions for themselves and for their families. They just have to do their work or dig into the truth. And they cannot say government is truth or media is truth. That's not. You need to find alternative information on internet and to make up your own decisions, make up your mind. Don't be so naive to be useful idiots to those people who want to control you later, like what happened to Chinese people. Lots of Chinese people today still don't know the truth because they only have totally government-controlled media and propaganda. And we have lots of propaganda in this country, but there is options. We need foster those options and support those alternative medias, podcasts, YouTube channels like yours, like mine, for example. I'm nobody. I have no agenda. I just want to keep my freedom here in this country. I have no place to go.
Absolutely. And guys, again, Lily's YouTube channel is in the description below, along with her Twitter and Facebook. And if you're enjoying this conversation, I highly recommend you connect with her on all the different channels. Also, give it a like while we still can. Okay, Lily, we've got a couple minutes left because I know I have a commitment at the top of the hour. But our governor, Chris Sununu, has come out opposing HB 544. And for reasons of free speech. Now, what message would you want him to hear from this to reconsider his position?
Well, I have not really getting into the details of why he thinks this is about free speech, but it's not. And I hope he will study the bill and talk to the people who sponsor the bill. I'm ready to have a conversation with him to say, this is not about free speech. This is very dangerous. It's divisive, make people feel guilty, and it's going to destroy our country. Maybe he will change his mind. I'm all open to that. The thing is, we need our citizens who know more about this and to support this bill. Write to your state representative, your state senators, ask them to vote for yes. And that way, we will be example, a shining state for the entire country to follow. I already have Chinese friends in California now. Their kids be made to be social justice warriors at 8, 9 years old, to learn this curriculum. And they all tell, hey, we're from communist China. We don't buy into this. So people who allow this, oppose this, actually it's people who fled totalitarian countries. So we need to continue to educate people, but we do need to work very hard to talk to everybody about this and to pass this HB 544.
Yes, and we'll continue to fight for it, and we'll try to get you into a room with Governor Sununu, and so you can help him to understand. But in the meantime, we will keep doing what we can do. All right, guys, just a few more super chats. Anthony says, "Have you ever heard of an artist named Ah Wee Wee? He dared to speak against the CCP and brought attention to issues in China, such as the earthquake that killed children."
Yes, I heard about him. He's great. Actually, earthquake happened to my home state, Sichuan province. Lots of people died, and all the donations went to corrupted officials. And I had one friend, a professor, wrote about this, and they put him on the blacklist. He cannot even go home to China because he exposed the truth. So Huawei is very brave. There are lots of still brave Chinese, and including people who live in this country. Other countries are trying to tell in the truth. But there are lots of them tell the truth inside of China. They got locked up, including some famous CEOs, millionaires, billionaires. So that we don't want them to do that to us in this country. There are lots of spies from CCP are in this country, or as close as Boston. Boston City Council raised the Chinese Communist flag during I think a few years ago when China celebrated 70th anniversary or something. So that we need to educate people to say what is going on and follow up. If you do want to know what is happened during Cultural Revolution, I suggest you tell your kids to watch this movie called To Live. It was a tear-jerking movie. Lots of political campaigns by Mao. Look at what happened to those nice Chinese people. Chinese people are wonderful, peace-loving, but their government is a total fascist today. And I hope you can distinguish the difference. So when the radical left here want us to believe Chinese people are being oppressed in this country, Are you kidding me? How come you don't talk about cultural genocide inside of China? You don't talk about Tibetan Buddhists being prosecuted, Christians being prosecuted from home churches. So it's, I don't know. Do you think that they just don't know? Or they just have agenda? I don't know. So I hope we will hold them accountable.
I think it's a little bit of both, if I'm honest. And guys, just to repeat, the movie that Lily recommends is To Live, and I'm gonna put it on my watch list. I definitely wanna check that out. All right, guys, we have to wrap it up. I just want to comment on a couple other super chats. Thank you, Cindy. I'm appreciative that Lily came on the channel today as well, and hopefully I will have her back in the future. Maybe we'll even do it in person. We could do a live show somewhere. And then Jason wanted Lily to comment on the lost generation of scholars who came of age during the Cultural Revolution. Lily, do you have a quick comment about Jason's question?
Well, lost generation of scholars, of course, lots of the scholars were murdered, died. Today, there are still a few in China, but they're being silenced. Imagine every university now has a Xi Jinping thought school. It's like a Chairman Mao thought school. And you talk about Chairman Mao little red books in the Cultural Revolution, they have a Xi Jinping little red apps. You download his app, you study his thoughts, you pass test, and as a party officials, you get promoted. As a journalist, you're allowed to practice journalism. And if you're regular people, then you get more social credit scores.
Wow.
It's 1984, free state.
Oh,
so,
my God.
Yeah, people might not know. Yeah, check that out, 1984.
Well,
just like that.
Oh, well, scary stuff, but we all have to fight back in whatever way we can. And again, Lily and I are doing it in New Hampshire by supporting HB 544, doing whatever we can to fight back. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but I don't know. I think that the Democrats are probably no match for you, Lily. So we're going to get it done here. But guys, that's all we have the time for today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Again, Lily's information is in the description, so please connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, and on her own YouTube channel. And I'll definitely have her back in the future. Also, give us a thumbs up on the way out the door. Really appreciate it. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Monday. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.